All right, I'm Harrison Graham. He's Mitchell Renz, live with you on NFL Daily. Jadeveon Clowney continues to circulate the news and rumors in the NFL. Mitch hasn't signed that franchise tag. Might be on the move here.
Might be on the move. So today's show is 5 teams that could trade for Jadeveon Clowney. Now, when you want to talk about just hype, there was hype around Jadeveon Clowney coming out of 2014, the first overall pick. But now we're sitting here, Harrison, 5 years later, and he just hasn't become that top-tier edge rush that we were hoping for.
Look, he's a really good player.
He's a very good player.
No one's going to dispute that. He's disruptive, but he has not lived up to being the number 1 pick. I remember he was kind of the first guy, Mitch, back at South Carolina, where people started suggesting he should skip his junior season.
Oh, yeah.
He was that highly touted. He kind of started that trend and, the skipping the bowl games and all that stuff. But look, you look at the numbers. Look, he's been good. 9 sacks last year, 9.5 the year before. First couple years, took a little bit of time to get going. Again, very good player, but he has not been that all-pro type of player we expected when he came out of South Carolina.
And I totally agree with you, Harrison. And this is also an interesting little report here. According to John McClain of the Houston Chronicle, it would be surprising at this point if the Houston Texans did not trade Jadeveon Clowney. So I'm going to hit you guys with this nice little question here. Will Clowney be traded? Y for yes or an N for no? Harrison, will Clowney be traded? If you're wrong, you're fired.
I think he will be in the end, just because I think
I'm surprised you even answered that.
He's not going to sign that franchise tag, and I don't think the Texans are interested in extending him at this point. I think that ship has sailed. They've got J.J. Watt. They're going to have to pay Deshaun Watson in a couple years. You can't be shelving out $100 million to a player that's not even the best player on your own defensive line. I think he gets moved.
I mean, that's the other thing, right? You have Whitney Merciless, then you have J.J. Watt, and you still can't get 10 sacks. Like, they're not doubling up Clowney. I can promise you that.
Yeah, he's getting a lot of single coverage, and he's still not getting double-digit sacks.
He's a good player. He is only 26 years old. So will Jadeveon be Clowney? Be traded? That wasn't me just acting like a clown. Chris is saying yes. Tip of the horn says no doubt. Amber, Richard, that's me, all saying Y for yes. So now let's talk about the top 5 teams that could go out and trade for Jadeveon Clowney, starting with the Indianapolis Colts. So the Colts, Harrison, have plenty of money. Lots of money. But the Colts, they really haven't had a solid, consistent pass rusher, really, since Dwight Freeney.
Yeah, so tell me why do the Colts make sense here outside of that? Look, you've got the offense.
They have the money.
Hopefully, they got the money. That's the number 1 thing. I'm still surprised Le'Veon Bell was not a guy they targeted in the offseason, but they did not go that route. They've got the money to absorb Jadeveon Clowney and a big contract he demands, but what are some other reasons they would go this route?
I mean, if the Colts really want to be able to compete, you need to be able to get after the quarterback. What killed the Colts in the playoffs last year? Not getting after Patrick Mahomes. What has killed the Colts in the past? Not being able to get after Tom Brady. Your window with Andrew Luck closes every single year. You finally have a healthy offensive line. You added a bunch of pieces around that offense. But if your defense is giving up a ton of points, and now I'll also say this, I don't mean to cut you off. The Colts, they started out 1-5 last year and played very, very well down the stretch. You add a player like Jadeveon Clowney, that they're right in the mix now as the best team in the AFC.
And I like the addition of Justin Houston as you see the depth chart there. Sure, I think he's more of a rotation guy. You put Clowney on the opposite side there, maybe slide him inside on some passing downs. All of a sudden, that makes a big difference. Like, you've got 2 formidable pass rushers with him and Houston there. If you bring him on board, Hunt's a good rotational defensive tackle there. You could get a little bit more depth if you bring a guy like Clowney on board. So you proposed what a potential trade between the Colts and Texans could look like.
So this is the deal that I thought made the most sense. So the Colts, they get Jadeveon Clowney, and in return, they're going to send Jack Doyle, tight end, to the Texans because the Texans desperately need a bunch of tight ends. And then the Texans also get a 2020 second-round pick. So Jack Doyle to the Texans, and the Colts receive Jadeveon Clowney. Now, the Colts, Texans, they're division rivals. You don't normally see this kind of trade going down between division rivals. But who's going to win the AFC South? Harrison, take that one, and then I'm going to interact with the audience.
Yeah, so who will win the AFC South? Get the comments coming below. We'll get your shout-outs going here in just a minute. The Andrew Luck injury factor is a big part of this because for those of you who aren't aware or just joined us, Andrew Luck still dealing with that ankle injury, so we'll see if he's ready for week 1. If he's full go, I got the Colts winning this division. If not, I've got the Texans repeating. I thought by the end of last season, the Colts clearly had taken firm control of that division. They just got off to such a bad start that they couldn't quite catch the Texans, but we saw in the playoff game who the better team was. So Luck's status is a big factor here. If he's full go, I think it's the Colts division to lose.
So Dan's going to go with the Colts. Sunny Sai says, what's up, Mitchell? What's up, Sunny Sai? Texans from Amber and Tip of the Horn. HTTR Lakers says the Colts. I'm also going to go with the Indianapolis Colts.
That brings us to team number 4. You throw them in here. The Oakland Raiders. Could the Raiders make another big splash in a trade? They already traded for AB this offseason. Could Clowney be next?
You want to get views on Hard Knocks? This is a very, very good way to do it. The biggest need for the Oakland Raiders this offseason is adding an elite edge rusher. They had only 13 sacks last season, Harrison. In comparison, Khalil Mack had 12.5, and in comparison, the next team with the second the least, that sounded weird, was the Patriots and the Giants with 30. So even if you double the Raiders' sack total, you're still in dead last.
Historically bad.
Cleveland Ferrell and Arden Key, I think, have looked good according to reports, and they looked good in the first preseason game. But a defensive line depth chart that looks like this, you could insert Ferrell opposite of Cleveland. You could insert Clowney opposite of Cleveland Ferrell. Yeah, I swear I do the Raiders report, obviously, right? So the Raiders have a very young and I think talented defensive line. But I think the one player that a lot of people are going to be like, but Mitch, do they really need a player like Clowney? If you can give me the high upside of Arden Key, okay? Arden Key looked very good against the Rams. He got a sack and 3 tackles. But last year, 11 quarterback hits, that led the team, but only 1 sack. If Arden Key wants to remain on this team, and if Arden Key wants to really get more playing time, he needs to turn some of those QB hits into some more legit sacks, because 30 tackles, 4 tackles for a loss, Arden Key's a talented player, but I don't think you can even put Arden Key and Jadeveon Clowney in the same sentence.
And Mitch, as much as we've said it, Clowney hasn't lived up to that billing. You put him on this defensive line, he's the best player on this defensive line, in my opinion. Look, Cleveland Ferrell, I think he's going to be a good player, but do you want him to be your top pass rusher as a rookie? That's not super ideal. That's a lot of pressure on a guy that most would say you drafted a little too high in the first place. You bring a guy in like Clowney, you let Ferrell be the kind of get more of that single coverage on the other side, groom him a little bit. Then a couple years down the line, maybe he's ready to be the top guy. But I think Clowney to the Raiders makes a lot of sense.
So this is the trade projection that I threw together here for the Raiders and the Texans. The Texans, they receive Arden Key. The Texans receive Brandon Parker because let's be honest, they need as much help as they can possibly get on that side, and then a 2020 third-round pick. So who says no? Yes, no. Let me hear it in the comments section. But between the Raiders and the Texans, we have a pretty good following here of Texans fans, since we're based in Texas, and we have a pretty solid Raiders following. So who's going to have more wins in 2019? Type R for Raiders or type T for Texans. Before I give my answer,
it's got to be the Texans. I mean,
it doesn't have to be anything.
I know you run the Raiders report and all that stuff, but I just think the Raiders are too much uncertainty. We'll see what happens with Antonio Brown and his feet. I just trust Deshaun Watson more than
Tony says T and it won't be close. Jeff Rogers, one of my most loyal watchers, says R.
And while I think the AFC South is a sneaky tough division, the AFC West is a beating. I mean, outside of the Broncos, I mean, the Chiefs and Chargers, 2 of the top 4 teams in the AFC potentially. I just, if you're Oakland, I think if you're pushing for 500, that's a pretty good season. Texans have legitimate playoff aspirations. I'm not sure Oakland's there yet, so I would type my T. So keep those responses coming. And while you do it, make sure you subscribe to Chat Sports. You love the NFL, you love the Raiders, you love the Texans, you love the Cowboys, you love the NFL in general. Subscribe, youtube.com/chatsportstv. Mitch, I don't know if you've been hearing, but there's rumblings in the office. If we don't get to 150K by the time the season starts, the hockey channel might be coming. None of us want to do the NHL breakdown. Season's going to get going in October. We want to keep doing NFL coverage, so subscribe at youtube.com/chatsportstv.
If we have to start doing hockey,
that's the rumblings.
If you guys think that I can't pronounce NFL or NBA players,
get those Russian names.
Wait until you hear me start pronouncing some players from hockey teams. My favorite team in hockey team, though, the New York Islanders. But they're not number 3 team to trade for Jadeveon Clowney. It's the Detroit Lions. So the second-year under head coach Matt Patricia. Let's be real here. The Lions, they want to run the football with Kerryon Johnson. Then they want to take pressure off Matthew Stafford, which I think it's a smart thing if you actually want to win some games.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. I think Clowney would be an absolutely great fit in Detroit, and the reason why I say that is because this defense, they want to do like a bunch of different packages, right? They want to throw in a bunch of different packages, and Clowney, he's an outside linebacker, but he can also play defensive end. He can do a lot of different things, and all the moves that the Lions have made this offseason are around that defense.
I think the keynote there, Mitch, is taking pressure off Matthew Stafford. I look at Detroit, and it reminds me a lot of the Cowboys with Tony Romo in the earlier part of his career. He was asked to do way too much.
Yeah.
And Romo, like Stafford, both talented and good quarterbacks, but they're not in that upper elite tier like the Aaron Rodgers and the Tom Bradys of the world, where you have those guys and they give you a chance to beat anybody. Stafford's not that. You need balance offensively running the football, and you need defensive help, and they have never consistently been able to field a good defense. I like the addition of Flowers. Imagine putting Clowney on the opposite side, though. All of a sudden, that's two pretty good defensive linemen coming off the edge trying to get after the quarterback there, Mitch.
Yeah,
you got Snacks Harrison.
Once this team added Snacks Harrison, you go out and get Trey Flowers. Like, this was a big change for the Lions defense. So this is the trade projection that I threw together here. Lions, Texans. I think that if the Lions, if I'm the Texans, I'm going to look deep in the mirror and I'm going to say, okay, they're the Detroit Lions. They have to go up against the Bears twice, the Vikings twice, and the Packers twice. I'm going to bet that the Lions are going to be a top 10 team in next year's draft. That's just between you and me.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go after that 2020 first-round pick. And I think the Lions then, they're like, okay, we might be able to get away with that because maybe that they think that they're a little bit better in 2019. But hey, we're at least going to see. So the Lions, they receive Jadeveon Clowney. The Texans, they get the 2020 first-round pick of the Detroit Lions. So the Lions last year, Harrison, they won 6 games, 6-10. Predict the Lions' record this year.
NFC North is tough, man. Vikings, Pack, Bears, obviously.
What about the NFC North? Because that's their division.
Is that not what I said?
You said AFC North.
NFC North. AFC North is not as tough this year. I'm struggling over here. NFC North. I think they're definitely the worst team in that division, but I also think all 4 will be competitive. You know, like Matthew Stafford is good enough to keep you in most games. The question is he good enough to win you most games? I think the answer is probably no. I think they're probably a 7-9 type of football team. I don't think they're a playoff team.
So HTTR Lakers says 6 wins. Jeff Rogers says 4-12. You're saying about a 7-9 team. So how about this? If there's any Lions fans out there, okay? OT says 8 wins. Adwin also says 5 wins. If there's any Lions out there and you guys want to make some serious cash, go to MyBookie, chatsports.com/MyBookie. So here's the thing. If you guys put down $100, you're going to get $100 for free. And if you're bullish enough to put money down on the Lions winning the Super Bowl, if they do win the Super Bowl, you're going to literally be able to pay to go to the next 5 Super Bowls. So MyBookie, chatsports.com/MyBookie. Use that promo code ChatNFL for a 100% deposit bonus. You ready to get into the top 2?
Let's go to the top 2. Who'd you have number 2? The Baltimore Ravens.
Baltimore Ravens. Oh, boy. This is a fun one for me, okay? So the Ravens have been in connection with Clowney, and I think it would be a good fit on paper for Baltimore, but here's the other thing. Baltimore lost a lot of talent on the defensive side of the football. Yeah. You lost C.J. Mosley. You lost Ardarius Smith. You lost Terrell Suggs. If you can insert Jadeveon Clowney to this 3-4 defense, I think it'd be a pretty interesting fit.
And you could argue he's more suited to play in a 3-4 defense. I think he can play in both. He's one of those versatile guys. But you look at the Ravens linebacker depth chart, replace McPhee with Clowney coming off the edge there. That feels like a major upgrade to me. And you don't have C.J. Mosley like in the middle anymore. This is a kind of a Ravens team in transition, obviously. Be nice to get another game wrecker on that defense.
But I think we can both agree, if there's a team that I think can really build linebackers, it's the Ravens. What I wanted to do here is throw a nice little trade projection together for the Ravens and the Texans. So I have Matt Judon going to the Texans, my mistake, and 2020 first-round pick. The Ravens, they get Jadeveon Clowney. I think the Ravens are a team, an organization where if you can get a talented player like Clowney, if there's one organization that I'm confident to get the most out of Clowney, I think it would actually be the Ravens.
I would agree with that. They have a very vast history, not just of linebackers, but defensive players in general. I think that would be a kind of a new, fresh start that could work well in Clowney's favor. So we'll ask you this question. Who has the better chance of winning the division next year? Texans or Ravens?
That's interesting. So, I mean, considering the Ravens, they won it last year. The Texans, they were 9-7, I believe. I think the Texans have been, 9-7 for like 3 straight, or no, Texans were 11-5. I'm losing my mind. Both teams ended up winning the division. I'm actually probably going to go on, that's a really tough one. I guess I'm going to go with the Texans, because let's put this together, right? If Andrew Luck is hurt, the Colts are out. The Jags aren't a very good team. So I think I would say the Texans, because I'm going to go bold here and say that the Browns, they win that division.
I'm going Steelers, actually. I'm going Steelers in the AFC North. So keep those comments coming. Better chance to win to the division, the Texans or the Ravens. We're to Mitch's number 1 team, Eagles. Why?
That was the worst drum roll.
That was such a bad drum roll.
This is the worst drum roll ever. So the Eagles, they lost Michael Bennett this offseason, and I think we can all agree, when you pay a quarterback as much money as what they gave Carson Wentz, $128 million, you're in win now mode, right? Like, you have to be in this small window where you're like, all right, we got to win a whole bunch of football games. And here's the best reason why I think that the Eagles and the Texans get a deal done. They both have things that each team needs, right? So the Texans, they need linemen, and the Eagles, they have plenty of offensive line depth. And if the Eagles want to get back to the Super Bowl, because it almost seems like it was so long ago that they were in the Super Bowl, but it was only 2 years ago. I think what a lot of teams are doing is if you can get after the quarterback, that's going to be a big change there. And if you can add a player like Clowney, that's going to be a big, big help. So right now, the Eagles, you can see their depth chart. Cox, huge player there. Yeah. Barnett, and then Graham. In terms of depth, this is a very, very solid team. But, Cox is dealing with an injury. Barnett's also kind of banged up. So if you can maybe just add a little bit more depth, maybe add a little bit more insurance, I think that's how you're ultimately going to get back into the Super Bowl. Because from top to bottom, Harrison, the Eagles are a very, very well put together team. Plus, their offensive line depth is very, very key. And if I'm the Texans, I'm sitting there, I'm licking my lips, because I can guarantee you that the Texans are very interested in what the Eagles have to offer at the offensive line position.
Yeah, and for those asking, like looking at that depth chart, like, oh, they're already said they got Graham, Barnett, Cox. Well, but if you're the Eagles or a team like that and you feel like you're a player away from winning the Super Bowl, you do it. And that could be the case in Philadelphia, where you add a good pass rusher in Jadeveon Clowney, maybe Barnett or Graham becomes more of a rotational piece. That could be the piece that gets you over the top. So I think if the Eagles find the right trade, I think it's worth doing.
I totally hear you. All right, so Eagles, I think you have to consider them at least one of the favorites to win the NFC East. So who's going to win the NFC East? We want you guys to comment below. Cowboys, Giants, Redskins, Eagles.
It's not going to be the Redskins or the Giants.
I
can tell you that. History will say it won't be the Cowboys, because the NFC East has not repeated as a division winner since the Eagles did it in 2004, I believe. So for that reason, I will lean Eagles, but I do think it'll be one of those teams.
I'll say this. You give me a full 16 games of Carson Wentz, I'll go with the Eagles.
Yeah.
If there is any kind of reason why he misses, I'm just saying like 2-3 games.
No Nick Foles this time.
No Nick Foles this time. It's a very, very ugly backup. So, Eagles, Cowboys, I think those are the top 2 teams for the NFC East. So, one more time here. Who are the top 5 teams for Jadeveon Clowney if he is traded? Number 1, the Philadelphia Eagles. Number 2, the Baltimore Ravens. Number 3, second-year head coach Matt Patricia's Lions. Number 4 is the Oakland Raiders. And 5 is the Indianapolis Colts. So, Harrison, if Clowney is traded, where will he play in 2019? You don't have to go off my list. This show's not about me. It's about everyone who's watching right there on YouTube.
I know you had the Eagles number 1. I would not go that route.
Okay.
I actually like the Colts fit because they've got the money to do it. Their defense, I felt like actually kind of played above its head last year. I don't think it's as good as it performed last year. I think you need more pieces back there, so I think Clowney makes sense. So I'll go with the Colts. I know that's trading within the division, which teams don't like to do, but I do like the fit there, so I will say Clowney to the Colts.
Clowney to the Colts. Also, Mike Run, he agrees with you. So, guys, comment below, if traded, where will Clowney play in 2019?